Okay, now that was just looking at our load, what it looks like. And now the next part was to dive into our current supplier to get some more background information on that and some more facts there. We know what our current supplier is, so I don't have to go into this much. There's a lot we already know, and people are discussing TriState all the time. Let's see if this pointer works. I was going to point out one thing here. There it is. Notice this one's going to come up again, HW, because it's in Colorado some. And we, of course, go down here a little bit in there. So when I talk about renewable portfolio standards, we're going to be talking Colorado-centric, but there's a little oversplash into some of the other states. So if anybody's real attentive, that'll be the reason why. We know also that TriState generates about 20, they don't generate, they buy, they provide, they supply about 25% now. Much of that's from WAPA, wind, solar, and there's 43 co-ops left. One of the principles for cooperatives is that democratic member control. One of the concerns we have with TriState is that TriState's got a lot of small cooperatives and a few big ones. This is just a look at that from 2012 to 2017. So I can jump back and forth of these because there's a couple of interesting things. What the graph is showing is the total annual sales from TriState to each of these co-ops in each of these years. So you'll notice one of the TriState co-ops in 2012 was getting about 26 gigawatt hours per year, and in 28, some are going up, some are going down. One interesting one is look at the people way at the top, United and Brighton. They were the biggest back in 2012. In 2017, they were way off the chart, 2182. I didn't stick the chart way over there. They've really grown. So some others have grown, some others haven't. There's now a blank spot there in 2017 that didn't used to be there. So the problem that we often have is that we're trying to push things in some ways with TriState and we're not having much luck. And that's basically the reason, is the sizes of the co-ops are different, the goals of the co-ops are different. And this is an interesting one because it shows these 22 elected co-ops here have the majority vote. The gold ones are in Colorado, the other ones aren't. So we're clearly outvoted by other states as it was. Obviously, it's one vote, one member. This particular pie chart is done by how many members there are. The others were how much usage there is. So that just illustrates one concern that we have. Let's go on to look at what we know about the 5% and our limitations and how we generate the 5% is what this chart is showing. So if the entire pie is 5%, we still have a little bit of that pie that's open to us that we can generate in. Doesn't show on those guys. Shows on the chart. Yeah, we still have a little bit of opening in the pie available to us to do something new in. And this is numbers for 2017. The maximum amount, of course, is the Williams cogeneration facility that was originally built in the 80s and then modified 2006-07 timeframe somewhere. That's what uses the majority of that up. And then we have the other things that are mentioned there. The other part of the data that I just got is every year we have to, with TriState, provide a compliance report to the Colorado PUC that says, given the fact that we're supposed to generate 6% of our energy via renewable portfolio or renewable energy, how are we doing? So this next slide takes a look at that report in a graphical way. The green is what percentage of that co-op's energy is renewable as expressed in this compliance report. What it shows is we're not in third place in this case, we're a little bit behind, down a little bit lower than that, and it shows a lot of co-ops aren't actually doing anything. Again, it shows that difference between co-ops and their interest in what they're doing. The part that doesn't make sense, and we need, perhaps Ron's the one who can make a note on this to try and research where these numbers come from, and maybe he already has the answer. But this says that we're only doing 2.6% of our energy is renewable via the compliance report. In the previous one, and it says we're doing almost 5%. So there's a pretty significant difference between the numbers in these two reports. So I'd like to try and understand that at some point just to get our data straight.
So you're saying you filed this report that says that how you're doing on the required 5% rule?
Renewable portfolio standard, and there'll be a couple slides on that much later when we look at government regulations. Gwen will have a thing or two on that. But it's stepped up so that now the cooperative world has to generate 6% by state statute. But what state statute is allowed, if a co-op generates 0, TriState makes up the rest for them. So TriState fills this in right out to 6% for all these co-ops. For all the co-ops. TriState fills it in.
6% is as of 2017, right?
Yes.
It goes to 10% by 2020, right?
Yes. It's been stepping up over the years.
And is there some kind of consequence? Well, everybody makes it because TriState fills in.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It's frankly, it's just gotten to be an accounting exercise. There's so much renewable available that it's no problem meeting those things. But that accounting exercise is done. It's interesting. It provides good data.
I apologize if this is a stupid question, but I don't understand why, if co-ops want to generate more electricity, why don't they let the co-ops do that instead of TriState having to fill in? In other words, we're limited to 5%. If we want to do 20%, why can't we do that and TriState back off?
Well, it's the wholesaler power contract we have with TriState. It is a contract that lasts through 2050.
Yes, I know that.
And that contract limits what we can do. We cannot go
But that's
out.
not a good answer. That sounds like the government, you know? It makes no sense.
That is the answer. And the reason that contract exists is because when TriState was providing all the power for everybody in what you would call a vertical marketplace, they generate, they transmit, and they give to the distribution co-ops. For them to be able to go out and get billion-dollar loans to build these massive coal plants, they had to have a captured audience.
Okay. Yeah.
It can be argued how long they have to have that captured audience, etc.
That I understand.
That's the rules that we're under now. And of course, I think everybody's aware we're concerned about that and are trying to understand better what our options are under that. Because it is a problem. It is a problem. People would like to generate more. Not all the co-ops would, many would.
One thing, just to make it slightly more confusing, sorry.
Clear.
The 5% for TriState doesn't apply to net metered. So you could actually achieve a higher percentage of renewables or renewable portfolio standard if it were rooftop solar, what we call rooftop solar.
Private.
That doesn't count against the 5%.
In other words, if somebody puts something on their house,
Right.
TriState can't know what's being generated exactly. They only know the excess that's been going out over a year. The excess does count.
So
What's
to
going on
meet
in
their
the house? So
financial obligations, because of money they borrowed and what the buildings they've done, yada, 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 they have to maintain a certain level. And no matter that there are co-ops that don't want to do this and that there are others that want to step up and do this, they have to do what they have to do to pay their bills, pretty much. Is that right?
That's right, and because they have a significant amount of debt, they need to continue to bring in a certain amount of money. That's why their rates are what they are, and we will look at that. Oh, we're going to look at it. Let's see, wholesale power. I think it's in this presentation. The debt stuff.
You have another question?
Yes.
But, I'm presuming that self-generation on customer premises doesn't count toward these percentages either?
That's correct.
Yeah.
This is the renewable portfolio standard is just kind of what's going on to the grid.
Yeah. One other quick question. Could you go back to the bar chart or the pie chart before? So the Codegen project, would that be traditionally thought of as an energy efficiency endeavor on the premises? In other words, it's causing the industrial customer to consume less electricity because they're co-generating?
I wouldn't say that's how you would call it in this case. You'd call it waste heat recovery. It's not efficiency in a way, because it's waste heat recovery. Lori, is that what you would say?
It's a type of efficiency, but people don't typically think of that as energy efficiency.
Okay,
It's
I mean,
just
it's,
generation.
yeah, it's a more efficient generation technology, if you will, but it's not renewable in any traditional sense.
No, it's not renewable if you consider where the original source of the fuel comes from. It's natural gas, and in another 10,000 years or whatever, you won't be able to do that whenever we run out of natural gas. It's not renewable. However, because of Colorado statutes that were passed, it became part of this as part of when TriState and CREA agreed with the renewable portfolio standard being raised higher. For them to agree, they got in old hydro became available and cogeneration became available, among other things. So it gave them a way, sure, you can raise the standards, but now we can count all this other stuff. We won't have any trouble meeting them. That was kind of that trade-off.
Okay, yeah, it includes methane from hog farms and things like that as well.
And methanes from mines.
Yep.
There's
Okay.
a variety of things that were added there in that time.
Thank you.
Brett?
And let's see,
I-
we're doing good on time, so we can keep
I'll
going
encourage
questions.
you to manage time with how many questions you think you can entertain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a comment, Brett, real quick, and then just to make it really clear, because I'm trying to do it in my head too. Even though self-generation isn't counted in our territory, much of our or if not all of our self-generation becomes net metered, which goes to the 5%. So it's not a complete black and white, that as we have more self-generation, we also have the net meter that adds to our 5%. So there's not like, a total, I think I'm being redundant, but I just want to make that clarity that our self-generation tends to become net metered, which does have net meter results that ends up being part of the 5%.
We are pushed to do more behind the meter stuff, because that's what is available. Of course, that's what people want to do. It's on your house, you buy it, you own it, it's an obvious thing. And the only effect that has on these numbers are the systems that generate more in a year than they use, because then you can capture, you can meter, you can add those numbers up when there's excess in a year.
And our policy allows for that. So do we actually have any net meter or self-generation that isn't net metered?
Yes, that would be these things right here, particularly the community solar gardens. They connect right into the grid, so 100% of their output is part of this. The Oxford PV, the Southern Ute Tribe project, it's connected right into the grid, so you know 100% of it is. So we have those, we have just a few projects. And it was interesting, and I don't know what projects these are, but obviously some of the ones you may not even expect up here, like Highline, that could be wind or something that they own. It's hard to know what they are, but there's significant others out there. But there's
Highline is
amazing, to not even get to zero on a lot of them is kind of surprising too, that nothing's being done. Delta Montrose is up there, and they're significant. Their numbers are like ours. This report gives a different number than what they're doing when you look at it in a different way. That's how I don't get this report. But anyhow, their Delta Montrose is hydro mainly from the Gunnison diversion canals. All right, we should go on with this. Now we're making some forecasts, and forecasts for growth and forecasts for rate increase, and trying to understand TriState, look into the future. It gets confusing, but I wanted to put these few things out. Not everybody's predictions are always right, and we have had trouble with TriState predictions in the past in some ways. In particular, their growth forecasts have always been more optimistic. If you look at their, back in 2005, the blue line, the blue sky forecasts were what the blue line is. The actual is what the browns. This brown's going to show up every time, and then their predictions each 5 years are put on over this. In 2010, their forecast then stayed with it, and then it's gotten higher than reality. And their most recent one is at that pace, and is already higher than reality, and it's continuing up. Their forecasts have been for whatever reasons, they've been forecasting more than has occurred. So if we look at their rate forecasts, they are predicting now they're not going to have any rate increase for 5 years, already 1 year into that, and then they're gonna have a rate increase perhaps less than 1% a year then going on forward. We know last year the inflation rate was 2.1%, and you can look up all kinds of predictions what the future inflation rate is going to be over the next 10 to 15 years, and typically it's predicted to stay around 2%, maybe get a little higher, but stay under 3%. So we know we're going to have some continuing modest inflation. Well, the questions we want to ask, can TriState actually do this, not have a rate increase for 5 years, and then have this low rate, and can they do it without increasing the debt further, because that's what we're concerned with, in a sense. So we're looking at some of the slides then. This just shows what their rate increases have actually been over the last period of time compared to inflation. The dotted lines are inflation that pick up every 15 years, 10 years, and 5 years. The green one's the most recent. Their rate increases lately are staying more close to what inflation has been. However, in any of these 5-year periods, their rate increases have always been above inflation. So that leads you it's going to be difficult for them to continue to not have any rate increases, but clearly they can do it if things change. Now this projects out to the next 15 years as part of what we're doing. The dotted line is what TriState says their rate increases are going to be over the next 15 years. Flat until 2022, then going up to 1% per year. The dotted line, the dashed line, the red one, is their predictions. The dotted line says, well, what if you started now and you only went up at 1.5%? What would it look like? 1.5% is less than inflation predicted, and that would be less than has happened in the past. So you can see that it'll be a challenge, but it's whether the rates, if you were just to go on the 1.5%, you would be above 9 cents out there. They're predicting that they're only going to get a bit above 8 cents out there. Those are predictions. Okay. To look at that and think about the possibilities, again, one can look past and look at data. This is, that orange line is the same old thing. That's the average rate to the members. The gold line is TriState's average rate to non-members. It jumps around a bit because sometimes TriState defers revenue from one year to another, so it kind of jumps around. But in general, you can see the average rate to non-members has been somewhat flat and declining. The average rate to non-members finally at this last year was between about 4.7 cents or so on that rate. Okay, the point of that is that, are we going to, sales to non-members, is that going to help us out? And probably it's not going to increase. If you look at their annual energy sales, sales to non-members, the red line at the bottom, has actually been decreasing. They're having more difficulty selling energy to non-members. The orange line is sales to the members. It has been going up until about 2012, and it's been pretty darn flat. So the very top is the combined sales to everybody, and it tracks these two lines where it was going up until about 2011, then has slowly been going down. Well, that then would impact the revenue, and these are the key places where TriState's revenue comes in. The very bottom one is the only one that's been growing, been growing not because of rate increases. The green line on the top is their total revenue. The gold line is the revenue that they're getting from their 43 members. The gold line is growing as, of course, rate increases go up. When they need more money, they have a rate increase. That line can't go up anymore. Looking at this is trying to understand, without a rate increase, what will TriState's revenue be? The one place it could go up some, because the non-member revenue sales is going down, which is kind of a problem. But this other one has been going up slightly. It would be good if this could go up and be more important. And that could be some wheeling charges and some things like that. There's wheeling charges and selling coal to other people is where those numbers primarily come from.
Hey, Britt.
Yes.
With the change in pattern with TriState predicting that they won't have a rate increase, is that any reflection on their change in refinancing that they went through?
That's a big part of it. The fact that they changed finance, we'll look at a little bit of that, meant that they were able to put off having to pay off some debts for a while, and I think that's a big part of it. Other parts of it is they're buying more power on the wholesale market than they were before. Other parts of it is the wholesale marketplace is so reliable they don't have to keep spinning back up. So Dennis was pretty good about telling us about 6 or 8 different reasons for why this was occurring. Probably could have done a better job of having a slide that listed those, but that's a part of it for sure.
Sorry, just to clarify, is that net revenue or gross revenue?
Net or gross?
It's gross.
Gross,
Okay,
yeah, total,
1.2 billion, right?
yeah, before they take
Yeah.
out expenses.
yeah.
Okay.
Harry?
Is the non-member revenue, is that decreasing because of production shutting down plants? Or is that because of the price? Overpriced in the market?
That's probably part of it. It's, the pricing has gotten so competitive on the wholesale market that unless they can compete on that, they are starting to lose sales. They're working hard to get additional sales, and right now they're actually have, you know, if you read any articles, there's articles that Lamar, I think it is looking at getting some more power from them all. It's really small compared to everything else. Yes, I would say that's probably the primary reason they're having trouble competing with the wholesale market, so the non-member sales are going down. Yes?
The sale to non-members, is all that coal-generated power?
It'd be their normal, whatever they have available to sell themselves, not the PPAs. So it'd be natural gas and coal. And I forget the difference between natural gas and coal. They got a lot of both. But it would be what they own themselves and can generate. Okay. This is looking at their operating expenses. Their operating expenses have continued to rise, and they were pretty steep until around let's see, it looked like 2012. The jumps in the long-term debt, the big ones, usually whenever that you get a jump in the long-term debt, it means they bought something new. That was the Springerville generation station came in here, and this other jump, which isn't as big, but caused it to go up again right around here, that was the Colorado mine purchase. So those two purchases are the primary reason they jumped up. Other than that, you just have minor stuff going on, and after that, probably minor. And they have got it down a little bit. The last year's rate increase allowed them to bring it down a little bit. And the gold line at the bottom is the member patronage capital. That means the part that, in a sense, they've charged more than they absolutely wanted, perfectly had to have. So that margin that they get every year, and you expect them to have some margin just in case things go up and down, they return some of that to the co-ops and they hold some. The amount they hold every year is this line going up. And that's the amount that they owe back to the co-ops, such that if TriState was ever to decide to just quit, they would have to pay that all back to the co-ops. Or like Kit Carson exited, they would get their share of that back. It's reached $1 billion. And their long-term debt is $3.2 billion, so their total debt is about $4.2 billion. Trying to understand the debt is informative, I think. One way you do it, you start looking at these tables. Oh my God, look at all these numbers. And different percentages, different times it goes on. You can't make any sense of that. So I have this data only over 4 years since they've done this major refinancing. So I decided I would put it on a plot to see if it helped you visualize it at all. So that's what I did. Now I'm going to jump. Look, this is 2014, and I've got this data that jumped 2014, 15, 16, 17. So I've got the years of data. And what's interesting, a variety of things are like when you look at this. 2 of these things are notes that must be required to be paid back every year. Because if I jump through them, you'll see those 2 things shrinking. The other things going on is the little white lines you can barely see on these things. That would mean 2 things are due in that year. The little white lines, like in 2034 is a huge number. There's 2 notes due in that year. Let's see, and so this starts at 2014. They had some pretty good debt coming up in 2018 and 2019. So in 2015, they moved some of that early debt to 2019. That's the red bar, new debt. And then you jump forward to 2016. They moved that debt all the way out to 2046. And then there was another rate increase, so they were able to get rid of some debt, pay off some, and then they created another debt only in 2029. So when you talk about their ability to have or not have rate increases, a lot of that probably has to do with when the debt is becoming due. We don't have debt, significant debt due now TriState until after they've said they don't expect to have any more rate increases. So it kind of ties in with this. They will have to pay off some debt in 2024, and then there's significant debt in the out years. That's a concern. I don't know how to do the math, say what that would have to do with rate increases. I do know that Rocky Mountain Institute has a research project looking into this to try and understand how this will affect rates over the years. I don't have any idea on when, if, or ever they will get that report out. I just know they have been working on it. Okay, and so conclusion, member sales are flat, non-member sales are decreasing, expenses have been going up about the same as inflation, and there's significant debt in out years. What does that mean? Well, we're probably not financial experts enough to know, but I think it's enough to give us concern as to what the rates in the future might be.